Hello Internet, I am Firebolt.
And I'm the Orbiter.
We'll start that. Hello Internet, I am Firebolt.
And I'm the Orbiter.
And welcome to Breaking Bollocks episode 4, I believe.
Indeed.
Last time, we didn't have any video, did we?
Oh, yeah.
And you don't know anything about that.
The situation has been rectified. It was...
Don't even attempt.
I bought a new hard drive. We've got plenty of space now, so I don't need to free up space for ages.
Mm-hmm.
Cost a lot of money.
And it cost a lot of dignity to delete that file.
Yeah, well, shit happens.
Anyway, on to today's topic, which is automation. I believe we even said last week.
Can we fuck off and let this do it by itself then?
Unfortunately, our podcast is not automated yet.
Well, maybe one day.
There will be one day where we can just get robots to do our jobs for us. That will be a glorious day for all of us.
Well, that's a debatable subject. I was thinking today's topic is probably going to take two distinct strands because there's got to be a lot of people that are pissed off about losing jobs because of automation. Mm-hmm. But at the same time, for me, automation is it's a tool, isn't it?
Yeah.
And tools only survive if they do a better job. I mean,
David Cameron's still alive.
Are you sure about that?
He's alive as far as I'm aware. Unless you had him killed in the night.
Revenge of the Pigs.
Anyway, yes. So, generally, what we're beginning to see is more than what we've usually been seeing, where manual labour is being automated.
I have first-hand experience of that.
We're seeing a lot more of the actual creative and intellectual jobs.
I lost a job for that.
The technical jobs being automated.
I lost a job to that. I lost a job to a computer. Admittedly, the computer does a better job than I did, but...
Well, yeah, you do have to sort of balance it, sort of.
But it happened a long time before. I mean, the job I was talking about, I was a projectionist at a cinema. But even before I started doing that, when I started, there's one projectionist for an entire multiplex, basically running all the shows. But a lot longer before that, there used to be a team of projectionists for each film because they had to put on a reel each. But then they gradually brought in more and more automation. And now it's just somebody puts a playlist together once a week and the computer presses play.
Pretty much.
I'm glad I took part in it, but I've got, there's debate about it, but I think the picture is, the quality is better. Now that they've got used to the medium.
I'm slightly worried about, with Google coming out with their self-driving cars, it won't be long before the sort of truck driver industry will be completely automated because it's just cheaper to get machines to drive the trucks.
Is that the primary concern for you, the loss of jobs?
Well,
because there are a lot of people that are worried about
the effect that might have on society that's quite worrying.
Well, certainly over the last two or three decades, society has been moving more and more into the leisure industry sector, isn't it? Which is great. We've all got more disposable income supposedly, and we spend more time, going on holiday, going to the cinema, going out to eat than we used to. And those activities need people to staff them to make them happen. But what if when you went to the cinema, it was all robots that served you?
Yeah.
I mean, it's already the case that you scan your own shopping and that.
And some people might have argued at the time, well, I would never let a robot scan my shopping for me. I like the human connection, but it's much cheaper. And although maybe every 10 or so scans you had to get someone coming over to make sure that the machine's working properly.
I think that's more to make sure that you well, they do random checks, don't they, to make sure that you're not like sneaking stuff through.
Yeah, but also just the machines sometimes malfunction and go, oh, you've placed the wrong item here when you haven't.
But haven't they as well? They've started with trolleys that can tell what you're putting in them as well now.
Yeah. Like, I think there's a new Amazon Go shop, which doesn't have any staff whatsoever. and you just check out by walking through the door, and it automatically charges your Amazon account.
See, on the surface, I think that's like really cool, but I can understand why people who've lost jobs because of it might be a little bit miffed.
Yeah.
I don't subscribe to this people worrying about the safety issues of things like self-driving cars, because once...
No, it's much more safe than any human driving.
Yeah, when you've been on the road and you've seen how some people drive.
Whilst you may be able to measure, oh, this thing makes the odd mistake, like 1 in a million drives, humans are much more faulty in that sense.
They're just having a bad day and they, like, road rage kicks in, and it's like...
That's not necessarily it. It's just sometimes they're not paying attention for some reason, or just randomly make a turn somewhere. Machines would be much better at that.
They'd be better at, I mean, once it's all integrated together as well, they'd be better at organising traffic flows and controlling congestion.
But it will... I think the main problem, once machines have those jobs, then you're still getting those products, but without the money flowing to people. So a societal change would have to happen where the people whose jobs have been lost...
Where does the money come from?
By selling the products that are being made by machines.
So
we're gradually moving into, I think in economics it's called a post-scarcity economy, basically where there's an overabundance of materials and people don't have to work for them. Which means it's a sort of like Star Trek society where you can just pretty much, like the replicators.
But where is the money coming from, though? In that situation, where does the money come from? How do people earn the money to consume?
Well, that's the thing. From the businesses that are making money off of this, they obviously get taxed. So that tax then should be spent on...
So it's basically a benefit society then? Like,
yeah, but it's not really a problem. Like, people will need to in future stop looking at unemployed people as lazy people. You'll just have to look at them as people who aren't programmers.
Well,
because pretty much some point in the near future, quite possibly within our lifetimes, the only people with jobs will be programmers.
Yeah, I mean, unemployed has a particular kind of or has had a particular kind of definition in the past. But if you were in a position to have enough money coming in because of the society situation that you didn't need to have like a full-time job, it would be a scenario where, I mean, I don't think people would just sit around and do sod all.
No.
I mean, I was thinking about this earlier.
Gradually moving to, there'll be a lot more people in education because of that. Well,
and also, I mean, I was thinking, how will I feel when it comes to the point where AIs are able to perform, I mean, I don't think it's far away, even if it's not happened already, are able to perform music with human emotion and to the same standard.
I think there's
then I couldn't do it for money, but I could choose to do it for pleasure.
I think there's a word for basically looking at a machine doing something very human, but you still sort of have that uneasy feeling.
But what if you don't know it's a machine? I mean, let's face it, half of the stuff that's in the charts is automatically tuned by a computer, the singing part.
Apparently it's less than you'd think, but...
Melodyne's
yeah,
really used
well, I
a lot.
suppose a lot of stuff actually in the charts, and maybe...
But that's another interesting thing. I mean, it's artificial, some of that's created, but it's still got to be... The machine's still got to be told what to do.
I think, though it has been said that entertainers are the least likely to have their jobs replaced.
Yeah, or maybe just the last.
Yeah.
Maybe we'll all just become entertainers. Hang on.
That would be a dire society.
Yeah, but just look at what's happening now.
A panic attack here.
Mind blown.
Anyway, I do still think there'll be a sort of level where we're like, well, machines can't give that sort of emotional thing that we want.
No, a tool has to do a better job than a human for it to be useful. I mean, it's like when when knives were first invented, it was better for cutting up stuff than ripping it apart with your hands. You know, it's like that's the only reason that it survived. It's like robotic evolution, natural selection thing.
What was I thinking?
I don't know.
Where?
The computers have taken over. The youth of today have less attention span than they used to because of their reliance on technology and
I do think
access to.
Even though, because we are seeing that quite a few computers, well, AI can write newspaper articles, and you have likely read a newspaper article written by a machine, which is quite a scary thought. You don't even know that, which is why it's so confusing.
The weird thing is, though, I mean, what algorithms are used by the programmers who create that program that can write that article? Because, in essence, if it comes down to it, I would actually trust a machine's impartiality more than a human being's. But it depends on what's inherent in the programming to start with, isn't it?
But I do think for
shit in, shit out.
A lot more of the sort of arts, they will become more important to humans because it'll be pretty much all we're able to do slightly better than machines.
Damn right. It should be more important anyway.
It depends. Because there's a certain sort of, well, what's practical.
Yeah. And in certain situations that it is appropriate to be thinking in those terms. But when you're in a situation where every need is taken care of...
we're not there yet. We're a fair way off. But I think within our lifetime, it will be close to that. That's provided that Donald Trump doesn't blow up the world in the next few years. But, you know, that's another depressing thought.
There may be a computer program manipulating the world political situation as we speak.
There are millions.
To have him impeached.
No, millions of bots.
Yeah.
Posting stuff online, making people think that that's what the world thinks.
Yeah.
But they're largely made by a few hackers.
In a way, then, it's almost like the military has become automated to a certain extent. Because, war is now a lot different to what it used to be. War is fought online now. Information wars. You know, you get...
Yeah, but you can't conquer someone... well, you can't conquer a place over the internet.
Do you not think...
You can change the system there, which can make it
affect
easier
ideologies. I mean, imagine if you were...
You can affect ideologies, but that doesn't mean that you've invaded that place. It's a very different kind of thing. It's a lot
but
more gradual and a lot less...
but you can essentially invade the minds of a population. If they're constantly online and being fed polarized opinions.
Yeah.
It creates an environment that you...
But that doesn't mean that it's very uncertain what's going to happen there.
Yeah.
Because there are a number of people who would just be like, well, that doesn't matter. If you had a gun pointed at you, you're much more likely to change your ideology to just being bombarded with some people of a different ideology. In fact, if you're bombarded with some people of a different ideology, you're more likely to stay strong in yours.
Yeah, but that's what weakens societies, isn't it? Division.
Yeah. Which is what's happening in America right now. A scary thought, though.
I must admit, actually, I really did... I mean, getting on to another aspect of automation. Drones. That Olympic ceremony display.
Oh, yeah. That was...
Holy crap. I mean, they were...
I think by the time this goes out, the Winter Olympics will still be on. Although I think it might have just closed. But right now, when we're recording this, it has just started like the other day. So,
I mean, we
just saw the opening ceremony. And it is like an interesting thing. It must have been using drones, where basically they had like a man going through the sky made out of lights that couldn't have been done any other way. And it's amazing how
transformed into the Olympic rings, didn't he?
Yeah.
So that had to be drones with lights on them, but
that was a program that did that.
Yeah,
And that might have not been done entirely by human programmers. They might have just put, well, I want this thing to happen, and then the computer did the rest.
Yeah, well, it's like when you design the graphics for a game, isn't it? There's a base kind of framework on which you put things. I mean, for instance, I've got software that I can use with multi-track recording stuff. I've got plugins, virtual instruments, which have originally been recorded by live musicians, but it's possible for me to mock up a full symphony orchestra using my computer. So, and while I'm doing a lot of the work for that, a huge amount of it is automated.
But I do still think that humans will always want to see the actual orchestra more than just the sound replicated.
Yeah, you can't. I'd be very surprised if they ever find a way to make that not just the experience of seeing people play live, but 70 instruments like that. It's an immense sound that you just can't. I don't think you can achieve through amplified equipment. No,
especially since with that, unless you've got an incredible surround sound system, it's coming from one place or a couple of places, rather than 70 different places, all where they look like they should be.
Yeah, and every instrument in the orchestra reverberates sound in a different way, like in a different pattern. So you would have to have a specifically designed speaker that does the same thing as a violin, which is essentially a violin.
Yeah.
It's like, well, it's just going to be easier to get somebody to play the bloody thing.
Pretty much.
Well, they're going to have plenty of time to practice because they won't have any jobs to go to, which is pretty much what being a musician is anyway.
Wow. Yeah. Any of his musician friends watching, you just sit around and play instruments all day. That's what he says.
Yeah, but most of my colleagues are teachers as a profession. We do make a bit of money as sort of semi-pro players, but but having said that, even in London, the big famous players still have to teach. They might do it at the music colleges and that, but there's still not enough money in music, really. Unless you play in weddings. Wedding bands get a fair bit of money.
Another shameless plug.
Well, I say a fair bit of money. It's better than any other job I've done by the hour, but it's still
draining.
Well, it's the amount of money you have to spend doing it. You might think that it costs a lot of money to hire a band, but you should see the amount they have to spend to do what they do. Anyway, that's getting away from automation, really. Conveyor belts.
Conveyor belts.
Yeah, they were, I suppose, one of the first sort of incursions of automation into supermarkets, weren't they? Conveyor belts. There must have been a time when you had to push your shopping along the counter.
I think
you wouldn't have had supermarkets then, would you? It would have been.
Well, yeah, but you'd generally either carry the bags up to the person. You didn't push them along the counter. You pushed them in the trolley up to the person.
But back then, people would have probably gone to a much smaller sort of local shop on a daily basis.
Supermarket would have been like the local market.
What about washing machines?
Washing machine?
Yeah, I mean,
this isn't very like.
Well, yeah, people used to have to...
I suppose we're talking now about the sense of automation.
Early automation,
yes.
Yeah. I mean, I bet there's a lot of people that would be against the progress of automation from where we are now, but would they be willing to go back to the point where we had to wash our clothes all by hand and put them through a mangle and hang them out?
Yeah, that's the thing, like...
Back then,
in a decade or so, the people that was like, I'm scared of this automation would be like, well, I could never live without this thing that's come of it.
It's just what you get used to, isn't it? Progress.
I think it's in the 1800s, about 90% of the country worked in agriculture, simply because that was what was needed to make food.
And then along came the combined harvester.
Well, along came the Industrial Revolution, and with it,
well, not
more and more tools, eventually leading to the combine harvester. But
yeah.
it's not just a magic combine harvester in the 1800s. But yeah, and now
I've got a brand new combine harvester.
I think it's less than 2% of the country work in agriculture now.
Yeah.
Because only a few people are needed to run so much land.
Well, some of that comes from like all the kind of research into farming techniques and, you know, fertilizers and genetic improvements to things. And
But a lot of people are arguing that this sort of next industrial revolution will be different, because this might be the first time that the automated machines are able to create more automated machines.
Self-replication.
And change them without us.
Right, yeah.
Which could be dangerous if they sort of go... If they're able to change themselves sufficiently so that they're like, well, we don't need these people.
Yeah, well, then you get into self-awareness, don't you? I mean, the motivation has to be inherent in a system or in a being of any kind to want to exist independently, and then you get into quite a philosophical kind of debate about what, you know, AI, the Turing test is all well and good for convincing somebody that something isn't a machine. You know, that doesn't necessarily mean that that machine has self-awareness and desires and needs and wants of its own.
Well, how do you know that any human has self-awareness and wants and needs of its own?
Well,
you only know from your own experience. Just because they look the same doesn't mean they are.
But that's getting really deep, because I could be sitting here thinking, how do I know that you're real?
I'm a machine.
Well, you are really. You're just a biological machine.
Yeah, it's...
This is one of the things that often not annoys me, but fascinates me, and I wonder why people don't get it. Is there's a lot of talk about things that are unnatural, and you know, all different subjects that are covered by that, like things that man does that are considered to be unnatural, and it's like, well, hang on a minute, man is a part of nature, and surely
everything around us is a part of nature.
It's impossible for mankind to do anything that is not natural, because we are...
That really pisses me off.
We are part of nature. It's part of our evolution.
Bigoted twats go, oh, homosexuality isn't natural. There are thousands of species that practice homosexuality, and they've been doing it for thousands of years. They are part of nature. It is natural. That was slightly off topic, but...
Yeah, but these things wind you up, I know.
Yeah. I can easily see, you know, sort of how you see these civil rights movements with a sort of opposition to them, and it's a obstacle in society to overcome, like prejudice against gay people. Well, at first it would have been probably people of colour, and women.
A lot of this seems to be about holding back progress, though.
Yeah.
And some people would argue that it's a way of tempering progress so that we don't go too fast, so that we've got a chance to get things right. I mean, like the thing about the, you know, like genetic engineering and all that sort of thing.
But I can see the next sort of big civil rights thing would be, should it be illegal for people to have sex with robots?
Should it be illegal?
Legal.
Legal?
Yes.
But I don't think it's illegal, is it?
Not at the moment, but it might be a big issue where, like, well, that seems...
Speaking of which, Westworld starts again in April. You got to watch that. It's ace. Seriously, Westworld.
Because if you think people having sex with people of the same sex is wrong, then you're going to think people having sex with something that's not even human is very odd.
It's essentially masturbation with a tool, though.
Yeah, but people won't see it like that.
Very complicated.
If they act human, then people are going to go, I'm afraid of this. I don't understand it.
Yeah, well, the other thing as well, I mean, that program we were listening to, what was it, on Radio 4? Simon Evans Goes to Market, I think it was.
Yeah.
And they were talking about the sex. He talks about sex robots a lot. Really good program. But the sex robot that's obviously connected to the internet, so it knows everything about you that's available data-wise. It knows what your wants and needs and desires are, what you do online, what you shop for, what you like, what you put in all your social media profiles. It knows you better than a human being would.
It just sounds
Probably knows you better than you know yourself, because you know.
That sounds like any girlfriend.
No, they claim to.
They seem to.
Yeah, but that's just it's a sleight of hand trick. They are magicians of the mind.
I never thought I'd be on a podcast talking about sex robots.
It doesn't surprise me in the slightest.
I'm not sure if I should take that as a compliment or just accept it.
I think they've got a long way to go, though, before they get that right.
I thought you were talking about me. I was like, well,
yeah, I'm not trying to encourage you in that direction, but
right. This got a bit out of hand.
No.
I'll stop.
Oh, okay.
Right. What? Why are you looking at me like that?
I've no idea. Where are we going to go next?
Hopefully away from here.
Automation. Is there anything that you have to do in your life that you would prefer was automated for you?
Getting out of bed.
Well, you literally want somebody to pick you up, like out of that Disney film WALL-E, where they're just like literally just kind of ferried around in floating chairs.
No, I mean just like in Wallace and Gromit, where they had the machine to get them out of bed.
Yeah, that looks more strenuous than actually getting out of bed, though.
Yeah, but if it was real, they would put like cushions on everything, and it would just be like, yeah, let's just drag this person out of bed. Once I'm up, I'll be fine. I would like something to automate our editing.
That would be good. That would be good, because I get to play more games.
It wouldn't be reliable, would it?
No, I mean, there's a certain amount of automation in the audio processing system that we use, but it still has to be checked through
and
make corrections to it, and
just annoying.
Those kind of things get better with time, but you know, it's not perfect. There's human verification still needs, and there's an argument as well that something can be too perfect. That it's, you know, that a small amount of imperfection is required for it to feel comfortable.
Yeah, with the musicians, you would think something that's able to make mistakes, whilst it may be inferior, it just seems more, well, it is more human, but it seems more real.
Well, the thing is, I mean, there are algorithms in music software that can put in what they call humanize. They can humanize things, but essentially they're just putting in like random deviations from the quantized perfect version, you know. But human beings can put in variations that are guided by emotions, and I mean, if they ever learn how to give AIs emotions, and I don't mean emotions that just convince other human beings that they're sad or happy or whatever. I mean actual emotions, so that AIs feel something. Then they will be able to perform as a human being, and at that point, you're then like, well, have we then created a new species?
Yeah, that'll be, you know, I mean, you see that in Star Trek with Data, how they're debating whether he's actually alive. If you haven't seen Star Trek The Next Generation, go watch it, it's very good.
Yeah, you should just do.
Yeah.
And this is covered by. Have you ever read any Friedrich Nietzsche?
I've not read it, but I have
Because that's kind of the sort of stuff that
some of his philosophies.
The idea of the Superman, where where first man kills God and then becomes God, basically. Because if you're creating a species, how would robots see us? Because essentially they would be superior to us.
Yeah. And then people would be
senses.
scared of them being superior to us. And, well, you wouldn't actually be sure if, because all it takes is a couple of mistakes in the programming for them to go, well,
I wonder.
I want to survive. The best way for this is if I can't be turned off. Let's kill the things that could turn me off.
But I wonder whether or not there may be almost a coming together. If we create this new species of automated beings, and it's already happening that we can supplement you can have false robotic limbs and stuff like that.
Yeah.
Is that the two species come together and become, well, the first thing that came into my head there was quite disturbing, actually. It was Borg. It wasn't, but I mean, Borg is, well, it is. I mean, that kind of, you can imagine that happening, can't you?
Well, you could get a sort of society. I think there's this game called Deus Ex that I played recently, where basically there's a divide in the society because some people have been mechanically augmented and have machine parts in them that make them better at certain things.
But in a world where you potentially...
And then they get discriminated against because some person flips a switch that makes them basically go insane.
Yeah. But in a world where you could potentially have a neural interface where your mind is connected to the internet, you're talking about the hive mind then, aren't you? Potentially. There has to be a firewall in place.
Yeah.
I mean, there's some amazing possibilities, but at the same time, there are some huge dangers.
But I think people will always be quite aware of that.
And I think that brings it back round to that argument of the people that are kind of against progress and try to hold things back are kind of putting a brake on things, and it allows the ethics to develop at the same time. Because there are a lot of people who would do anything simply because they can and because it's possible to find out what the possibilities are. But do you need some kind of tempering mechanism to kind of hold that back a little bit? But
then do you get people who go a bit too far being switched off by some safety mechanism for having negative thoughts that might harm civilization?
Well, you could argue we've done that to ourselves in the past when you look at some of the psychiatric institutions that we've...
But they're not being switched off by something inside of them.
No, I mean, there were electrocutions and there were, like cranial electrocutions and like drugs being put in to basically kind of dull people down that were deemed dangerous, weren't there?
I don't think we'll return to that, though. With us always being quite aware of that, I don't think that will happen.
One Flew Over the Cuckoo's Nest. That's a really good film about that sort of thing.
I can see 3 different ways of society progressing after this big sort of automation revolution, if you will. Not in the sense of overthrowing, but sort of overthrowing society, if you will. That sounds a bit negative, but hear me out. The first one would be that we learn to coexist and end up getting this right, so that we end up with a sort of Star Trek society where machines and humans can work together to create something effective, and their different approaches to things give the best result. It's sort of combining the two. Even though the more emotional mind may be rational, in some situations it does better because it can be unorthodox. And the machine mind would be good for logical, thought-out procedures that are very calculated.
Yeah.
The second way that this could go is a sort of Wall-E society where we get everyone basically being spoon-fed by machines. They're catered to completely because they don't have to do anything, so they have no drive to do anything. And so just end up living a life of leisure, doing whatever they want, and knowing machines will always...
I don't think that that's how it would go, though. I mean, like, I'm trying to imagine, and to a certain extent, this is the case when if you're lucky enough to be in a situation where you have a bit of choice about what you do. If you're not full-time kind of tied to a specific role in society, for me, that would free me up to do whatever I want to do. You know, I wouldn't be doing something because I needed the money. I would be doing stuff, but I wouldn't then, because I didn't need money, it doesn't mean I'd just sit on my arse and watch TV.
Yeah, I suppose.
It would free the time to actually do something that I find fulfilling, and, like you said, education, you know, and creativity.
Yeah.
Maybe we would, as a species, become a lot more focused on the creative arts.
But then would there become overabundance of people doing that sort of thing, so it would become sort of...
What is an overabundance, though?
Basically where it's saturated. There's too many people to have to sort through what you actually find entertaining.
But what you're talking about essentially is then competition.
Yeah.
And that only exists within a financial system.
Does it, though? Because a lot of people do that for fame, and then compete for fame, not for the money. I mean, obviously there is a certain amount of the financial situation, but a lot of people are doing it to get to that sort of status, and if there's too much competition, then they might
be famous. I mean, what is the attraction of being famous?
To leave your mark on the world in some way.
You're not going to be here to appreciate that. Once you've gone, you've gone.
Yeah, people are weirdly obsessed with legacy.
I mean, I can understand, you know, wanting to make sure that you kind of keep the species going and having kids and, you know, that. But in terms of your name being remembered in several hundred years, what's the point? What I mean, yeah, it's great that there are people that do that, but why is it such a big thing when you're not going to be there to...
There are people who would postulate that within their lifetime, enough advances will be made so that their consciousness can be uploaded somewhere else. Either to the cloud or within a machine body.
I know a lot of people
so that they can never die. Like, I don't put the chances of my death at 100%. I put it at like 98.9%.
I think most people that I've met, when confronted with the possibility of immortality, have said they wouldn't want it. But I've always been like...
I would want a longer life than...
Not because I want to live forever, but just because life is so... amazing to experience. Why would you not want to?
I would want a longer life than my physical body permits, but not immortality.
Well, as long as the universe could be immortal as well, I suppose. But it's just like...
Once I get bored with life, I want to be able to switch it off.
But how could you get bored with life? Until you know everything, there's no excuse for being bored.
Yeah. There is. I think there would be a certain point where you're like, I just don't see the point. People are dying around me that don't want this.
Well, that's what I was going to say. I mean, I think a lot of what people's objections to being immortal is the pain of losing the people around them. And it's like, well, you know, I can understand that. But if everybody... life would become a lot more, because I mean, presumably if you could live indefinitely, presumably in that kind of situation you could still be either switched off if you've been uploaded somewhere, or you could be shot if you happen to still be organic in nature. So killing someone would mean a lot more, because you'd be taken away a potentially infinite being instead of just a couple of decades or whatever.
I mean,
and does that
it wouldn't
matter?
be true immortality, because wherever they're stored, they have to be stored somewhere, would eventually get destroyed by like whatever star system they're in.
It's a weird one.
Exploding.
Yeah. You'd have to think, though, that hopefully if we were making that kind of advance, we would know when that was going to happen, and we'd be prepared to emigrate to a different galaxy or whatever.
Well, the universe is still finite. I mean, yes, you're talking
as far as we know.
Yeah.
Astrophysics is relatively young, isn't it?
Yeah. No, I don't think I'd want to live for 1 billion years if I had the choice. I might want to live for a couple of 1,000 years, given the choice, but after that point, I'd be thinking there's not really much else to see.
But then if I think in terms of that, a couple of 1,000 years, if I'd lived a couple of 1,000 years already, I would have lived through, you know history a lot better than me.
Yeah.
I would have lived through basically from the time of when Jesus supposedly lived through.
You would have lived generally around the time it's theorized that...
I mean, like the Battle of Hastings would have been halfway through my life.
The original Nile civilization was around, which wasn't even Egypt at the time.
Seen the Dark Ages, whatever, whether they existed or not, but lived through medieval times, lived through Tudor
What
times.
do you mean, the Dark Age?
Well, they talk about the Dark Ages as though it was like this kind of... But there's...
It was a technological darkness. After the fall of the Roman Empire, there was a big setback there.
Yeah. Mm. But you'd lived through that. You'd have lived through... Then, you know, all that came after it, all the history of the last, even the last history of the last 100 years, and to be at the point that we're at now, if I was looking back over the last 2,000 years, I would be fascinated to find out what was going to happen in the next 2,000 years. If you compared this to what it was like when you were a child,
I suppose,
whatever a child might be, and I mean, I'm already in a situation where looking back at the 70s when I was born. And you know, pre-internet,
but then if you
computers, no mobile phones, and I look at the world now, and I think another.
Like, how well can you remember your early childhood?
Very early childhood, not particularly well for sort of 6 or 7 years.
How well can you remember when you were 10? How many memories do you have that are clear whatsoever?
It depends what you mean by clear.
Well, like I can sort of vaguely remember...
You tend to remember an emotion.
A couple of experiences when I was about 4, but I don't remember anything clear about it. I just remember vague, a couple of images, that's all.
And everything's seen through the filter of your memory anyway, and it's also affected by all the kind of nostalgic programs that you see. And
2,000 years, you wouldn't be able to remember when you were human.
When you were what? Human?
Yeah, you wouldn't be able to remember what your physical body looked like. What the people... You wouldn't be able to remember your own mother's face. Because that would have happened a millennia ago.
Yeah, but I mean, you're looking at the negatives. I mean, you know, why would I need to remember my mother's face if my mother was immortal as well? Well,
looking at the maths, it is unfortunate. The estimates are generally the 2070s. Even with current advances, it's...
There are people that I've known that have died that I try to picture their faces and it's difficult, but I have photographs. You know, like my granddad. If I tried to picture his face in my head now without the help of photographs, it probably would have faded a lot more than it has.
It'd be scary though to just not remember the people that you once held so dear whatsoever, and them just being so distant. Footnote in a history book.
It would be experience. It would be a huge amount more experience than we get a chance to.
Anyway, automation.
Yeah, we're basically talking about automating human beings, aren't we?
Yeah. Which might happen eventually. But yeah, I was talking about the 3 ways that I see automation going.
Yeah, you didn't get to the third one because I...
The third way is a lot more pessimistic, that we really screw it up and either become a hive mind and just have no feeling whatsoever, or just the machines take over.
That's...
Because a programmer slipped up somewhere and tried to connect a machine to the internet.
Yeah, is that... Stephen Hawking seems to be particularly concerned about that possibility.
Yeah.
Probability, actually. He seems to be... I mean, when you hear somebody like him warning of the dangers of that, you kind of got to take notice, because it's like, you know, we can all sort of sit here and say, oh, it's not going to happen, we're going to be... But when somebody as clever as him...
Whenever I am unsure about the future, I look at Elon Musk.
Do you?
Yes.
And then drive your car to Mars.
He's done everything he said he would do.
Yeah.
It's...
What has he said? What has he said? Well, no, he must have said that he would do some things that he hasn't done yet.
I don't know.
What are his plans?
But... basically, one day he was bored in traffic, went, I'm going to build a tunnel network under LA. And now he's building a tunnel network under LA.
Yeah.
It's insane.
Automation.
Then he just went, I'm just going to sell some hats. Now I'm going to sell some flamethrowers.
Yeah.
He worries me. But I think if he's not worried about automation being a massive problem, then I think we're all
Maybe
right.
he's a robot.
He is definitely a robot, but...
You should read Asimov.
He's a supervillain, I'm sure.
You should read the Asimov Future History, Robots, Empire, Foundation, the whole thing. It's like from now, or from halfway through the last century, right to the hundreds of thousands of years in the future, past the development of psychohistory and mathematical analyses of evolutionary events. Yeah, carry on.
I was pretty much done anyway. But
yeah.
I think
we need the positronic. We need the 3 laws of robotics.
We should probably wrap up there, I think.
Go on then.
First, we will say a little of what's happening in the next episode. The next episode will be very political, because we will be talking about Brexit. So if you are a Brexiteer, you can fuck off for that one, because you won't like it.
Well, yeah.
If you get easily riled up by that, then
there's going to be polarity, isn't there? There's going to be anger on both sides. I mean, yeah. I'm not going to start.
We'll talk about that next week.
Yeah, we're going to get into
next week, 2 weeks ahead. It's confusing. Anyway, I have been Firebolt.
And I've been the Orbiter.
And this has been the 4th episode of Breaking Bollocks.
Thank you for joining us.
Thanks for watching. We'd really appreciate it if you support us on various things, obviously subscribing on YouTube, Twitch, following us on Twitter or Facebook. We have a Discord server that you can join and talk to us and other people, and a website where you can check out blog posts.
And obviously this isn't free for us to run, so if you'd like to support us financially, we have a Patreon page where you can donate monthly and get subscriber rewards. We also have a Stream Elements tipping page where you can make one-off donations. The links are all in the description.
Farewell.
See you next time.